It's time for Health Futures with Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and it must be Friday. It's Friday, April 13th, and we're coming at you live from the Scottsdale Air Park. It is Money Radio 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and the World Wide Web at moneyradio1510.com. If this is the first time you've tuned into the show, Health Futures is a show about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life, and the way we do this is bring extraordinary guests to the show. And we are talking about a topic that will now be the third show this month that we are talking about it, and it's a very important topic, and that is National Healthcare Decision Day. And what does that mean? Well, that means a lot of different things, but to really cut it short, it really means making sure your wishes are known, making sure you have an advocate. And I was blessed to have 2 weeks ago, I had Dr. Kevin Hazelhorst here in the studio, and I had him here with Scott Fisher. And then just last week, I had Steve Wagner, who has an incredible company called Right Care Foundation, and he's also with Phoenix Fire, a first responder, and he serves on the Governor's Advisory Council on Aging and the Task Force Against Senior Abuse with me at the Attorney General's office. And then I also had in the studio Stephanie Bivens. She's an elder law attorney, and we were talking the same thing we're going to talk about today. But one of the things I wanted to really bring up about Stephanie is Stephanie said there are 4 key components that you need to have to make sure your wishes are known. And that is, 1, have a healthcare power of attorney, have a health care mental power of attorney, have a living will, and have, as she called it, the bonus that do not resuscitate. So let me kick this show off and introduce our guests here today. Both have been here in the studio with me. Both are extraordinary what they do. And right here to my right is Dr. Cary Schnitzer. He's the Chief Medical Officer at HomeCare, Arizona. Welcome back to the show.
Glad to be back.
Glad to have you back. And just to my left, to Dr. Schnitzer's right, is Dr. Babek Nayeri. He is from the Department of Health Services. He is the Director of Healthy Aging, and he is also the head of the Health Care Committee for the Task Force Against Senior Abuse with the Attorney General's office, and I get to serve with him. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure being here, and thanks for the invitation.
It's good to have you. And when I have 2 physicians here in the studio with me, I always give you the courtesy to ask if I could use your first names.
Please.
So Cary and Babek, thank you here for being on the show. So I want to talk about, this really important topic, and both of you guys are advocating for it, and you both really see the opportunity for us to really make sure our message is heard. So with that further ado, I want to really pivot over to you, Cary, and really talk about this importance of this subject. April 16th to the 22nd is National Healthcare Decision Day. What does that mean to you, and what does it mean to HomeCare Arizona?
Well, it's a chance for all of us to think about our health future and what would happen when we're facing difficult decisions, either in an immediate accident that were to happen to us, or just kind of long term to be thinking about as we age. What do we want our life to look like, and what would our end of life what are our end of life goals, and what would that look like?
Exactly, and really, it gives us a chance to have that conversation, which is so important. And there's a website that's out there. It's called the Conversation Project, and is really to address this very need and this very issue. And it's something that I want to just impart to our listening audience. This isn't something that you just bring up to your mom and dad over a dinner conversation. Hey, by the way, have you done this? This is really an important conversation, and this is one of a series of conversations that you should be having with a loved one well before the need ever exists for you to even access those advance directives. Wouldn't you agree?
No, I would agree. There's people feel an awkwardness about the conversation, but what I really like to stress is that by having the conversation, it does two things. It makes sure your wishes are respected and those are followed out. And the other thing that's almost as important is it takes the burden off of family members. Often if we haven't had the conversations, they have to deal with a crisis situation. You put pressure on them to feel like that they're the one making the decision. So I think it's a help for yourself and it's actually a help for your family.
You know, one of the stats that's up there at the Conversation Project is that they have polled Americans, people out there, about having advance directives. 90% say, yes, this is important, we need to do this. And only 27% actually do it.
27 to 29%.
27, 29?
29% actually have it in place. And, we prepare for certain key passages in our lifetime. We prepare for marriage. We prepare for having a baby. We prepare for retirement. But when it comes to preparing for the end of our life, most people avoid that subject.
They do. They
Yes.
avoid it like the plague.
We do. And, it's important, as you said, and as Cary said, to make our wishes known in advance through advance directives or otherwise known as life care planning through in the state of Arizona through the Attorney General's office. So let's, imagine an individual who's in the hospital, can't speak, can't swallow or breathe on their own. And who will speak for them? Who will make a decision for that person? Who knows his or her wishes? Those are all important things for us to be talking about.
Dr. Hazelhorst said, by doing this, you're actually giving your family a gift.
Yes.
You're giving them the gift because you don't have to make that decision. They've made their wishes known.
Right. And I think all of us as physicians have seen that where we've had families dealing with this, and not only sometimes when it's not clear, then different family members may have different opinions, different understandings, and it really creates an incredible stressful situation for the family dealing with these issues when they haven't had the conversations before.
Especially when there's a terminal illness involved. People who have Alzheimer's, as our population is aging and the rate of Alzheimer's is growing. People with Alzheimer's, cancers, heart disease, other terminal illnesses. Who will speak for them when they can't speak for themselves?
Exactly. And I see you sitting there with a proclamation there.
Yes.
Did our governor do something again this year?
Of course.
He does a lot of great things.
Yes. So Governor Ducey has proclaimed April as the as our healthcare decision month in Arizona, and in support or complementary to the national healthcare decision, as you said, 16th through the 22nd of April. But in Arizona, we have the opportunity to educate, promote, and have the conversation throughout the month.
So the Department of Health Services is really big about this. They want to get that message out there, and they really are doing it through your department, really helping to get that message out there to the community. No different than, I've had the Department of Health Services here talking about anti-smoking, and you guys have incredible campaigns about that.
Well, the Department of Health is always in a position of educating the public and promoting information that to help people make healthy choices and to live better and longer. So, as we were talking before the show started, Cary was mentioning, sometimes people live longer, but do they really live better longer? So the quality of life is important, and this is really an initiative through the Attorney General's office and the Healthcare Committee, as well as the Task Force Against Senior Abuse Board. As AG really, Attorney General does promote the life care planning in tandem with the Secretary of State's office, and we can talk about that further.
No, we can talk about that in the second segment, but you're absolutely right. I mean, this is such an important topic that really our community really needs to get behind this. I talked about this at one of our other shows that we did on National Healthcare Decision Day, and I think we need to figure out how we can get a playbook from La Crosse, Wisconsin. In La Crosse, Wisconsin, I believe the population base is about 30,000, and 97% of them have got advanced directives in place. Well, you hear the music. I can't believe we're down one segment. We got 3 more to go. You've been listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I've got Dr. Babek Nayeri and Dr. Cary Schnitzer here in the studio. Stick around. A little bit more on National Healthcare Decision Day. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and we are on our second segment. We are talking National Healthcare Decision Day. We're coming at you live here Friday, April 13th, and I've got Dr. Cary Schnitzer here in the studio. Dr. Schnitzer is the Chief Medical Officer for HomeCare Arizona, and I've also got Dr. Babek Nayeri. He's the Director of Healthy Aging for the Arizona Department of Health Services. He's also the chairperson for the Arizona Attorney General's Healthcare Committee, their task force against senior abuse, which I serve on with him. And he's also a frequent visitor to the Governor's Advisory Council on Aging because he reports on what's going on at the Department of Health Services. So welcome both of you here to the studio. And Babek, you said at the end of in the break and after the first segment, you said, wow, it goes fast, doesn't it?
Yes, and when you mentioned first segment is already over, I wanted to mention that one of the theme for our flyer at our promotion and education through the Healthcare Committee of the Attorney General's Office is it always seems too early until it's too late, quote unquote. And that's the theme that nationally it was adopted. It's never too early to begin the conversation and about advanced care planning and advanced decisions about what your wishes are, what treatment you want, what's right for you, what's meaningful to you. Including spiritual support, as we were having a conversation on the sidelines, having family nearby, or being at home versus being at the hospital or in a healthcare facility. So begin the conversation by telling someone. Name a substitute decision maker, someone who can speak for you when you cannot. Make sure they know how you feel and can make a decision for you. If you can put your decision in writing, get a wallet card that names your substitute decision maker, talk to family members and friends about your wishes, talk to your healthcare team, and that's also important. And letting your healthcare team know, your primary care provider and their team, as far as what your wishes are, what you would like to see happen. With the DNR, the do not resuscitate, oftentimes we have had incidents when the first responders arrive at the scene. We all enjoy the TV shows where the first responders arrive on the scene and they commence life support, and the individual is resuscitated, brought back to life, and doing wonderful, and no after effects or consequences of their resuscitation. But we know in reality that's not the case. Oftentimes there are injuries, and if the first responders have not arrived on time, every second counts.
Every second does.
So,
and that's what Steve Wagner, his whole company's about. Right Care Foundation is about teaching people how to resuscitate. Because as he says, if the brain lacks oxygen for, I think he says 9 minutes or more, it's permanent damage to the brain. Yes. And he says that we can bring these people back, but gosh, it would make it so much easier if somebody had started compressions before we even got there.
So it always seems too early.
When it's too late.
Until it's too late.
I want to unpack a couple things you talked about here, and I want to go over to Cary. And the one thing I want to unpack is you you did it so well. You packaged the whole thing very nicely, Babek. So thank you. I know you do some teaching, so you're teaching all of us. So I appreciate it. But the one thing I want to unpack is being at home versus being at the hospital. And Cary, we talked a little bit about it at the break. People think that people go to the hospital to die, and they don't have to.
No, that's correct. I think, more and more nowadays, first is that there is much better care at home from all aspects, from home caregivers to physicians to palliative care programs, hospice programs that provide excellent care. We don't know what state that we will be in, but an unusual statistic is that people, when they're dealing with end-of-life issues, and they have the same diagnosis or disease that they have, that if they choose a less aggressive route, that they choose to go on hospice, which people are concerned about going on hospice, they actually live longer than if they decide to go and get the treatment at the hospital. There was a study in 2007 by Duke University that found that people on average lived 29 days longer if they actually chose less aggressive treatment than more aggressive treatment. So in some ways, you may be by choosing to go home to live at home and not to die in a hospital, you're actually choosing to live longer.
And better quality, too.
Absolutely better quality.
I talked about it, I think it was 2 weeks ago on the show, and I described what happened with a friend of mine. And, my friend got diagnosed, unfortunately, with pancreatic cancer, and I think both you doctors know how bad that is. People don't live very long once you get diagnosed. I think the average lifespan is 3 to 6 months. And he actually went through a treatment and nearly killed him. And he wanted to continue on. And his children were like, no, Dad, we almost lost you. And he's like, well, I need to do it for you. And they had explained to him, don't do that for us. And I shared with you guys, and I also shared with my listening audience, I intervened, and I just said to him, I said, listen, do you want more better days than bad days? Because if you want more better days, then don't do any more treatment. Because with the treatment, you're going to get a lot of bad days.
Right, and those bad days are, can be pain, vomiting, throwing up, just not feeling well, and not being able to get, as you said, that quality. And, every day for all of us, we should think of every day as our last day, so to speak. And,
right.
You want to get the most out of life. And then when you're dealing with the end-of-life issues, to feel horrible on multiple of those days, you have to think about, is that right for you and the situation that you're in?
Absolutely. The other thing that Babek was talking about was an advocate. And, you really need to choose that advocate. And who's that person that can speak for you? I know, Babek, you talked about having maybe something in your wallet with a card that, I think the first responders look for ICE, right? Yes. ICE in case of emergency. And that's a really important thing for all of you to know. If you haven't put in your phone your ICE, they will go to your phone and they'll look up ICE to see whose name is down there. But even if you have a wallet and you can name that advocate, that would be really, really helpful for them.
Yes.
Really, really helpful. Really talking about the hospital, I know that Dr. Hazelhorst, he was really upset that, a couple of years ago when I had him here on the show, that the famous Arizonan, he lived here for part of the year, and he lived in Louisville, the other part. Muhammad Ali died in a hospital. He's like, he didn't have to die in a hospital. And I think that's a misnomer. I think out there most people think you go to the hospital to die. And, Cary, you've got a lot of experience in hospice and palliative care. 98%, 97% of them die at home. And hospice isn't a place. It's a concept.
Right. It's a concept where it's basically bringing not only just, I don't want to use the word just care, but all the needs. The hospices have social workers, they have physicians, they have nurses, they have aides, all of those things to really help make the goal is quality of life. It's no more kind of focusing on are we going to cure something or not cure something, but really giving high quality care and high quality life.
Absolutely, and that's what it's about. It's about the quality. Dr. Nayeri, Babek,
yes.
What else are you working on?
So, we will, with our partners, community partners, and those who have been members of valued members of the healthcare committee at the AG's office, we have put together a flyer. We have a goal to increase the number of Arizonans who have their advanced care plan or their life care plan in place, and we encourage people to register those with the Secretary of the State's office, because there was a House bill passed into law last year that will enable the Secretary of State by December 31st, 2018, they will have all the rules and guidelines in place to how to provide real-time information to first responders as well as providers, whereas in the past, this information was just housed at the Secretary of State's office and with no one having access to that.
And I believe that was Representative Heather Carter's bill.
Yes, that's correct.
And Heather has been a guest here on their show a couple times, and we'll definitely need to bring her back. But as you said, in the last segment, we prepare for marriage, baby, retirement, but we rarely have this conversation. And we're coming up on halftime here at Health Futures, and I really want our listening audience to really think about this conversation. And when we come back in the third segment, we're going to maybe give you some tips on how to have this conversation. You're listening to Health Futures. Halftime here. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you, and we're on our third segment. If you're just tuning in, I have Dr. Babek Nayeri. He is with the Department of Health Services, Healthy Aging Division, and he also chairs the Healthcare Committee for the Arizona Attorney General's Office for their task force against senior abuse. I have also got Dr. Cary Schnitzer here in the studio. He's the Chief Medical Officer for HomeCare Arizona, and we are talking advanced directives. Specifically, we're talking about Healthcare Decision Day. And National Healthcare Decision Day is the week of 16th through the 22nd. We've been teeing this up for the last 3 weeks, this week included, and it's really important for us to get this message out to our listening audience. By the way, if you missed the first two segments, you can catch them up on our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button up on the top and hit the drop down, and you'll see the radio show there. Click on the radio show, and you'll catch about 200 other shows, but you'll catch this show too. The first two segments were extraordinary, and we were talking about advanced directives. We were talking about advocates. We were talking about the four key components to doing advanced directives, and that is national, or should I say healthcare power of attorney, mental health care power of attorney, a living will, and then, as Stephanie Bivens would say, the bonus is the DNR. So I want to pivot it over to you, Cary, and we were talking about this at the break and talking about life-saving measures and having the conversation, and it's not just with the family, right?
Correct. And what Dr. Nayeri, Babek, was speaking about, it really hit home, and I kind of wanted to just kind of supplement that. And so one is, it's really important to really have a conversation with your physician so you understand the disease that you're facing. Commonly we will hear things of, do we want a resuscitation or not? But a lot of the decisions really are made based on your own understanding of what you're dealing with. And for example, people with heart conditions, resuscitation may make sense in certain situations for them, but people facing cancer, it often does not. And to explain simply, if somebody's facing cancer, to try to restart a heart, well, the problem isn't the heart, it's the cancer.
Right.
So a resuscitation can be very painful and uncomfortable and put somebody through something they don't want to. So it's very important to have that conversation with your physician and really ask them, what does a DNR mean? That's a medical term. I don't know. I'll let Dr. Babek talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you. So I would like to just echo what you have said. It is important to have that conversation with your healthcare team, with your providers, and make sure that you understand your condition, your health condition. Make sure you understand the life expectancy with your condition, and what are the chances that you will live a quality life versus a long life without quality, on life support. Those are all things that you need to ask your providers. Have a conversation with your provider about what do not resuscitate means. What does it mean if you resuscitated? It's not like what you see on ER or some of the TV shows. The reality is much different. So it's important to have these conversations now. It's how time flies. We're already into the third segment. Time really flies. We really need to take the opportunity to prepare, communicate, document, and act in terms of what our choices are for our life.
The other thing I was going to add is that not only do we want to make the decisions, but certain decisions, if we haven't made them beforehand, or actually legally can no longer even be made by family members. So in the state of Arizona, if somebody was facing the end of life and they had not previously had a health power of attorney, had not designated somebody to be their advocate, and they had gotten to the point of should they continue with food, should they continue with fluids, and there's been some very high-profile cases in the state of Arizona. The only way those decisions can actually be made is by a court order, which can be long and drawn out. So it really avoids doing all of this beforehand, preempts getting into very difficult situations for families.
And this is also correct, and it applies to mental health conditions. So it's important to have a mental health power of attorney as well as a medical power of attorney attached to your living will.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Because even with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias are unfortunately on a fast track to and growing exponentially as we age. So even though Alzheimer's disease and related dementias are not considered mental health conditions, what if somebody has dementia and is unable to make choices for themselves? Have that conversation now before it's too late.
Absolutely. And, it's you bring up that mental power of attorney. We're one of the few states that has that, and especially with the higher incidences of Alzheimer's and dementia. And, Babek, you know this because you attend our Governor's Advisory Council on Aging. I mean, this is our number one initiative, is to educate our community about dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yes.
And one of the areas that we're really focusing on is first responders, to make sure that they know enough about this disease so that when they respond to what may look like a domestic event, where in fact it's somebody that may be sundowning, rather than agitating that person, they will know how to better respond to them, to maybe redirect them and literally talk them off that ledge. So it's really, really important to know that there is that mental power of attorney, because without that, you will have a difficult time getting that person the assistance that they might need, and being able to make, obviously, the informed decisions on their behalf.
It's never easy to have these types of conversations with family, friends, loved ones. Yet, based on what I have had the privilege of observing, it causes a lot of stress, as you mentioned, Cary, and anxiety, and a lot of family discord when family members have to come up with decisions and there has not been an agreement. There's not been a person who's been appointed to act on behalf of the individual whose wishes have been recorded.
No, absolutely. And as Stephanie Bivens said last week, you're giving your family a gift.
Right. Yes. And it reminds me of a person that I took care of, an unfortunate patient with Alzheimer's who had dealt with some infections, was in the hospital, and then it came to the point where that they needed dialysis, and the decisions had not been made in advance, and the family was split. I actually spent 3 hours with the family, and half of the family wanted to go forward and half did not, and it wasn't a straightforward, should they go on dialysis? In this particular patient, they were struggling with blood pressure issues of running too low, so the dialysis was risky, and boy, it would have been so good had they had the conversation before to really know what this person would have wanted in this situation, instead of the family having to guess and be divided.
And I think for anyone out there that is suffering from some acute illness, has some type of morbidity, should be having this conversation. I think of my mother, and she never was put in that position, but she had one of the very, very first AEDs put in her, automatic implantable
Defibrillator, ICD,
right. She had one of those put in her, and I mean, listen, you don't really need to do CPR on her because that thing will kickstart itself, and you need to really understand what do not resuscitate is, and you need to make sure that if you are DNR and you have one of those in you or a pacemaker in you, you don't want them turned off, right?
Correct. And how pacemaker, the AICDs, you have to be very careful how those are turned on and turned off at the end of life. It has to be well thought out, and you actually want somebody who's got some expertise in it.
And that goes back to the way we opened up this segment, and that is you should be having this conversation with your physician.
Absolutely.
You should be having this conversation with your physician, your specialist. We're getting ready to wind down this third segment, and I'm going to pivot over to you, Babek. What would you like our listening audience to know here about the conversation in conclusion?
Sure. Thank you, Bob. Keep the conversation going and complete a life care plan. We'll be happy to provide you with some resources in the next segment. Again, have the conversation because that's how we really care for each other.
And it's not one conversation. It's an ongoing conversation. Yes. This is a conversation you can tee it up, whether it be over Easter, whether it be Mother's Day or Father's Day, but continue to have that conversation and make sure those wishes are realized.
Indeed.
So we're winding down our third segment. So when we come back on the fourth segment, we're going to give you those resources. And I'm going to have Cary talk a little bit about HomeCare Arizona. It's an incredible resource right here in our community. You've been listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. We're down 3. We got one more to go. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress HomeCare Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. I'm your host, Bob Roth. And we're on our fourth segment here. And if you're just tuning in, I've got Dr. Cary Schnitzer here in the studio. He's the Chief Medical Officer for HomeCare Arizona. And I've also got Dr. Babek Nayeri here. And Dr. Babek Nayeri he's with the Department of Health Services. He's head of Healthy Aging, Director of Healthy Aging. He's also on the Task Force Against Senior Abuse. He heads up their Healthcare Medical Committee. And we have been talking about on this show and for the last 2 weeks prior about National Healthcare Decision Day. This is a really important topic, and I will tell you, as I shared in other shows that we did these last couple weeks, 30% or more of our Medicare dollars are being used by 5% of our Medicare population in the last year of life. And they say like nearly 2/3 are used like in the last month of their life. So this is an important decision morally, ethically, and physically that we should be making sure people's wishes are memorialized. So when we left on the third segment, we said that Babek would be back to tell you where you can find out information on this. So, Babek, I'm going to pivot it over to you.
So thank you, Bob. If I may piggyback on what you said earlier, this is a conversation to have on an ongoing basis. It's not just on Healthcare Decision Day, and we're fortunate to have the entire month of April dedicated and proclaimed by the governor as a Healthcare Decision Month. So have this conversation on an ongoing basis throughout the year and have it early. The resource, because again, we know that 1 in 5 Arizonans are estimated to have completed an advanced care directive, and less than half of severe or terminally ill patients are estimated to have completed an advanced directive. So again, have this conversation, and it is the way we care for one another. The places where you can get no cost resources, the azag.gov. That's azag.gov. That's the Arizona Attorney General's office. If you go under the senior care tab, there's a life care plan. The whole packet is there for you, including a living will. Also, the azhealthyaging.com. If you go to that website, that's actually the Arizona Department of Health Services Healthy Aging Program website, and there are tons of resources. And on the top of each page, in the banner, where you will see the governor's proclamation, but also the Attorney General's link to his website that directly will take you to the life care planning page. The National Healthcare Decision Day, or NHDD, that's NHDD.org. That's another wonderful website, as well as the Conversation Project, if you Google that. So those are all the online resources, and I know Dr. Schnitzer has a lot of other resources that he will share.
So if I can just share just with our listening audience before we pivot over to Dr. Schnitzer, is those sites are no cost, and we are here to advocate and make it aware that we need you as our listening audience to make your loved ones and everyone else know that it's time to memorialize your wishes. It's time to have an advocate, someone to speak for you when you cannot. The no-cost thing is really important, but at the same time, each one of you may have that confident. You may have a professional. You may have a doctor. You may have a lawyer. We ask that you visit with them. Certainly get advice from your professionals, but you need to have this conversation now, right, Dr. Schnitzer?
Absolutely. As Babek said, waiting, time goes fast and flies, and before we know, unfortunately, we're in difficult situations, and it's better to have the conversation early. And even though it may be awkward at the beginning, afterwards you're going to feel better that you had the conversation.
Absolutely. So, you know what, I only have a few more minutes here, and you know, I love when we get you here on this in the show, or on the show with me, Dr. Schnitzer, and you know, you are with an incredible organization called HomeCare Arizona. I'd love for you to share just real quickly with our listening audience about HomeCare Arizona and some of the things that you're doing here in our community.
Sure. So HomeCare Arizona is actually it's a physician network. We're a network of 600 primary care physicians and 3,000 specialty physicians, and we're really focused on those Medicare eligible patients, and we really provide very personalized and collaborative care. Our goal is to really make the healthcare system work better. And I'd just like to give a few examples of some of the things that we have. We have something called the Center for Service Coordination, and really will help you with anything that you need in terms of healthcare needs. You know, it's sometimes so hard to figure out what to do. It's literally one call, one phone number, and that person will help you, whether it's you're needing to figure out how to get oxygen, a bed, or just get an appointment with your doctor and you're struggling. The other thing that we have are very beautiful community centers. We have one in the Phoenix area, one in Goodyear, and one in Chandler. They are open to the public. You do not have to be a member of HomeCare. They have both a very beautiful fitness center and have a lot of classes to help you with both improving your quality of life as well as helping you meet different health needs that you may have. May have.
You know, I know that my friend Dr. Benheim has a program, Brain Savers, that he's running at your place.
And I just actually, Dr. Benheim was in my office yesterday and having a conversation, and it's an outstanding program that is actually done in our community centers.
And the community center, and I want to echo what Cary said, they're extraordinary, and they are open to the public, and, you know, I forget Ben's name, but I know Ben has put together incredible fitness equipment and stuff there for people to use.
Right. So Ben Brock, who is our director of our community centers, he actually has a master's degree in exercise physiology, but is just an incredibly bright individual who's put together fantastic programs, both in terms of the right exercise equipment and in terms of the regular programming as well.
So if you want to learn more about OptumCare Arizona, go to OptumCare.com. And just click on Arizona. They'll show you the state. It just comes up on my website. This is a robust website. It's easy to navigate through. How many physicians do you have in that network? It's huge.
Right. So
600.
So 600 primary care physicians and approximately 3,000 specialists.
3,000 specialists. Wow, that's extraordinary. So the website is OptumCare.com, or go to 866-339-3755, and don't ask for any specific person. You'll reach the general call center, and they are all about service, and they will give you the connections that you want to get connected to.
Perfect. And if I could just add with the website, that is our general website, which will get you to everything. If you have specific questions about dealing with advanced directives, if you just do a / of NHDD, that will link you to other resources as well.
And many of the resources that Babek talked about.
Correct. They actually help. They connect in.
So any final comments? We got about 10 seconds.
Bob, thank you so much for the opportunity to educate and advocate on behalf of our fellow Arizonans.
Thank you.
Again, I hope that every one of you listeners speak with your family members, friends, neighbors. Share this information.
Start having the conversation now. And no, it's not just a one-time conversation. It's a multiple conversation. We gave you the resources. We dedicated 3 of our shows to this very important topic. Thank you for tuning in. Tune in next Friday. We're going to be talking about skin cancer and how to prevent skin cancer. And we got a big event that's happening at the Jewish Community Center on April 25th. So make sure you tune in. Thank you for listening to Health Futures. Make it a great day. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next week.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress HomeCare Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit CypressHomeCare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3 FM.